Welcome, everyone, to the group.
Hello. Hello.
Now, we all know why we're here. We all committed terrible acts, and we need to come to terms with that. Tabitha, something to add?
I don't see why I'm here. You didn't use a sizing chart.
So?
So how did your project turn out?
Okay, that was not my fault.
Exactly. It wasn't my fault that my princess seams didn't match up either.
Did you transfer your markings?
My what now?
Well, I'm ready to admit my sins.
Go ahead, Abby.
I didn't make a mock-up. And it was super expensive fabric. The bust was too big, the waist was too small, and the shoulders. Oh God, the shoulders.
Thank you for sharing, Abby.
I hope you've all learned a very valuable lesson here. Even though it may seem quicker and easier to skip these steps, who do we really hurt in the end?
Simplicity.
No. Ourselves. We hurt ourselves. So how do we fix this?
Ice cream.
It's not me that needs to fix anything. Learn from our mistakes?
Yes, we learn from our mistakes. And what did you learn from your mistake?
Don't buy expensive fabric?
Give up.
I didn't make any mistakes. Oh, we have so much work to do. Sometimes you have to call yourself out for the sake of the greater good. Today, I want to talk about those aspects of sewing that I tend to avoid like the plague. And I know I'm not alone. I also know that I shouldn't avoid them, and neither should you. Here are 5 of those undesirable activities and why you should suck it up. And by you, I mean me. Number 1, hand sewing. I have talked about this at least 3 times on this channel. Some people love it and most of us hate it. Every time I am faced with hand sewing, I dread it. And every time I end up saying, that wasn't so bad. I recently hand sewed 2 of my friends' pillows that needed repairing as we sat and talked. It was mildly enjoyable. And yet, I'm sure the next time I have to do it, I will dread it just as much as I ever do. It's inevitable though, and if you're gonna get started sewing, you should know that there are times when you have to hand stitch a particular area because a machine just won't be able to tackle it. Number 2, basting. This can be done by hand or by machine. I tend to do it by hand because the longest stitch on my machine isn't very long and it's difficult to pull the stitch out. A basting stitch is used to give a rough idea of what the garment will look like before putting in the final stitches. I admit that I often skip this step because if I'm gonna sew it, I may as well put the permanent stitches in, right? Well, when I make a mistake, I regret this. Always, as the final stitches are always harder to unpick than a basting stitch, which you can usually just pull right out. If you are adjusting a pattern or creating your own pattern, this is especially important. You just can't tell how a garment is going to fit as well when using pins, and it's easier to sew without the pins since all the lumps that they cause won't be there. I still only baste when I'm unsure about something, and not every time like I probably should, but do as I say, not as I do. Number 3. Pressing. When I am in full sewing mode, I keep my iron on while I work. This makes it super easy to press every step of the way, and pressing makes it easier and faster. Half of the time you can skip pinning if you give your hem a good press. Honestly, of all the items on this list, this is the one I am the least guilty of, but I will skip it if I'm in a hurry. My iron heats up pretty quickly, so I really shouldn't skip it then either. Number 4. Mock-ups. Mock-ups are a practice run of your final garment done on a less important piece of fabric to ensure that you got it right. I have historically skipped this step because there used to be no such thing as a less important piece of fabric in my possession, and because it seems like a lot of extra work for something that is basically useless. I have made 1 real mock-up in my life, and it was because the dress is for a friend, and I want to surprise her with the fabric choice. Since she lives an hour away, I couldn't very well measure each step of the way to get a good fit, and I really don't want to mess it up. Overall, mock-ups really don't take a long time, and if you're unsure about a pattern or a fit, or you have a really special or pricey fabric for the final garment, you probably should make a mock-up. I probably won't, but maybe I'll learn. And number 5, finishing seams. I never used to do this, and to be fair, it's because I was never taught to. It isn't often included in pattern instructions, and when it is, it just says finish seams. To be honest, it isn't even always necessary. If your lining layer covers your seams, you can probably skip it. And certain fabrics, like most knits, don't really need it since they aren't prone to fraying. However, I learned very quickly with a few of my projects, notably the halter top and Renaissance gown projects, that fraying can happen quickly. And the last thing you want to have to do is start over because you lost your seam allowance a thread at a time. There are several different methods to finishing seams, and I'm still sort of learning when to use which one. I utilize French seams a lot because they look nice and they're super easy, but I realize that they don't always lay correctly depending on where they are. A rolled hem is always a good option for finishing your edges, I think. I mean, I haven't come across an instance where it isn't a good option. I haven't yet used a serger on a project, but this is a quick and easy way to finish your seams. I mimic that same technique with a zigzag stitch on my machine, and it works pretty well most of the time. I did get a serger for Christmas. I'm a little terrified to use it. I know that they are more fickle than a sewing machine, and I don't want to break it right out the gate. I did go through the instruction manual, rethread it, and kind of use some test fabrics through it last night to kind of get a feel for it. I just haven't used it on a garment yet. Probably tomorrow. There are plenty more solid tips and advice that we should all be taking advantage of, I'm sure. These are the ones I've come across at this stage of the game. The question remains, however, will I heed my own advice? Or will I continue to sew in a seamless mockery of depressing baselessness? Quite frankly, it's more than I can handle. Find out by subscribing to this channel. Confess the cardinal sewing sin you are guilty of in the comments.
And strive for perfection in all you sew, but be happy with the journey regardless.
My schedule is going to be a bit wonky from here on out, but I plan on committing to at least one project a month. I hope to see you all there. Until next time. Welcome everyone to the group. There's a cat on the chair. Where's the spray bottle? Continuity, Butters. Come on. You're killing it. I gotta get this line all out in one shot, and I can't do it. Okay, so I am filming.
Okay.
And as per usual, I did not get my stuff in order. I didn't even put my microphone on. Okay, I'm not filming. It's Therapy Cat here.